Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, helping you prepare for Thanksgiving with fresh produce, quality meats, and all the ingredients for your favorite holiday dishes. Learn more at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Thanksgiving is still a few weeks away, but if you're anything like me, you're already dreaming about the food. In my family, we usually skip the turkey and instead turn the kitchen into a tamale assembly line with all my cousins hard at work putting them together. We want to know about your traditions too. Do you have a unique Thanksgiving recipe or a twist on a classic dish? Send us a voice message with your recipe and we might feature it in an upcoming show. Our email is in our show notes. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. Coming up, California Governor Gavin Newsom wants Colorado to redraw its congressional maps. Some former state commissioners say, slow down.
They should be ashamed of themselves for what they're doing. It won't end well. It won't end well for anybody.
Then, the conclusion of an expensive, years-long political fight that's meant to improve kids' health.
I don't think that when I was 14, I realized it was going to become a fully addiction.
Plus, an astronaut explains how growing up in Colorado changed him.
It was the first time in my life where I actually thought I was good at something.
It's Thursday, November 6th. Here's the news in Colorado today. California voters have decided to sideline their independent redistricting rules and redraw the voting map to favor Democrats for Congress. And Governor Gavin Newsom wants Colorado to be next.
We need the state of Maryland. We need our friends in New York, in Illinois, in Colorado. We need to see other states.
CPR's Caitlin Kim caught up with people who served on our own state's independent redistricting commission to see what they think of the idea. Caitlin, before we get to Colorado, what happened in California, and how does it fit within the larger picture of this redistricting fight that is happening across the country?
So at issue is who controls the House of Representatives after the 2026 midterm elections. Right now, Arlo, Republicans have a very slim majority. I think it's about 3 people. And President Trump wants to make sure Republicans keep and even grow that majority. So earlier this year, he asked Texas to redraw their congressional maps to gain 5 Republican seats, which they did.
Okay.
And California wanted to counteract that move. But unlike Texas, where the state legislature draws the map, in California, they have an independent redistricting commission. So Californians went to the polls on Tuesday to decide whether the state could bypass the commission. And the voters there said yes, overwhelmingly.
So theoretically, at least, that means we'll be basically even in the House. 5 new seats in California and 5 in Texas.
Yeah, in theory, they would cancel each other out. But, Arlo, it doesn't end with Tuesday's vote in California. Some other Republican-controlled states, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, are redistricting. And this is why Newsom is calling on other Democratic states to follow suit. Think Virginia, maybe Maryland. I will also point out that there are some court-ordered redistricting going on in a couple of states.
Okay, so then how does Colorado fit into that picture?
Well, the TLDR is, even though there is a Democratic governor and a Democratic-led state house, there's no way Colorado could do this in a way that affects the 2026 midterm elections. You'll remember that less than a decade ago, Colorado voters, just over 70% of them, adopted independent redistricting commissions to redraw congressional lines every 10 years. It's in the state constitution. To bypass the commission, you'd have to go back to the voters. And the next opportunity for that is next fall, 2026. So it'd be too late to do anything for the 2026 midterms.
Now, you spoke to some of the members of Colorado's redistricting commission. What do they think about the idea of sending it back to the voters?
They didn't like this redistricting fight that's playing out across the country. Appalled, angry, disappointed were just some of the adjectives they used to talk about this idea of redistricting in the middle of a decade. This is what Bill Leone, a Republican commissioner, had to say.
We did a good thing here in Colorado. We should leave it alone. And I'd say the same thing. I've said the same thing to my friends in New York and Texas and California that are involved in redistricting, that they should be ashamed of themselves for what they're doing. it won't end well. Won't end well for anybody.
So the commission was made up of 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 4 unaffiliated voters from all across the state. And the commissioners I spoke with all thought that the final maps they drew were fair. That said, a Democratic commissioner said she understood why some want to see Colorado jump into the fray. She said the political situation is much different than 2018 when the amendments were adopted.
Okay, I want to go back to a point you brought up before. Colorado's redistricting wouldn't happen in time for the 2026 midterms. Is there any political will to see it happen before the decade is up?
Arlo, I'm not sure that there really is. Yes, some political candidates like Phil Weiser, the current attorney general who's running for governor, says yes, he wants to see the congressional maps here redrawn. But you're not seeing a lot of other elected officials talk about it or even flirt with the idea. Governor Jared Polis, for example, has stayed out of it. And again, it would have to go back to voters, and that means a campaign, which would take money. And so far, none of that has really materialized.
And less than 24 hours after the redistricting measure passed in California, Republicans filed a lawsuit.
Yes, the lawsuit says that the move is unconstitutional. And without getting too deep in the weeds, both Texas and California's new maps are undergoing legal challenges. Look, I will say the Texas map made assumptions about the Hispanic shift towards Trump and Republicans, thinking that it's permanent, and that was based on Trump's 2024 performance. But last night's victories, granted in blue states, show that the gains he made with minority communities there, well, he totally lost that. So redrawing maps in Texas or any other state could end up backfiring to some degree because it's all based on assumptions from past elections that may or may not hold. Because, look, as we all know and see and witness every day, the political pendulum swings back and forth.
CPR's Caitlin Kim, thank you.
You're welcome, Marlo.
This week's election has brought a conclusion to a long and expensive local political saga. Former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg spent a record $5 million just on this year's campaign. We're talking about the debate over whether to allow flavored tobacco sales in Denver. CPR's John Daly has covered each twist and turn up through the results this week. Now, John, ultimately, will people be able to buy flavored tobacco in Denver in the future?
Well, no, though there is an exemption for flavored hookah. City Council banned the sales of flavored vaporizers, menthol cigarettes, and flavored cigars, chews, and pouches late last year. Mayor Johnston signed the ban, and voters have now confirmed they want to keep it in place. Despite how contentious this issue has been in recent years, vote totals show more than 70% of voters support the ban.
City Council originally voted to ban it years ago, and then the former mayor of Denver vetoed it at that time. So we've been hearing about this back and forth struggle for years. That has meant a lot of uncertainty for tobacco shops and wholesalers. So how will this ban affect them?
Well, local stores will likely stop selling fruity flavored vaporizers and menthol cigarettes as the city begins to enforce the law in the coming weeks and months. Opponents warn many consumers will just go across city lines and buy tobacco there or online, and that it will cost the city plenty of sales tax revenue, into the millions, they say. Last night, our colleague met a vape and tobacco business owner named Wally Alberguthi, who was watching the results.
It will be very hard, yeah, especially with the bad economy we experience now.
And I talked with Phil Guerin, who runs a vape shop and leads a pro-vaping group called the Rocky Mountain Smoke-Free Alliance. He was quite upset about the money the other side, Bloomberg in particular, spent in support of the ban.
Where does that leave, regular people like us, merchants? Basically, the bricks and mortar they have built this country.
Now he'll have to remove those flavored products from his shelves. He says he's not sure about the future of his store called Mixed Up Creations on Colfax.
Those who support the ban often cite people's health. How do you think the ban is going to help with that?
Well, first and foremost, they've been talking about kids. This does not ban nicotine or tobacco per se. It bans flavors, which are marketed to kids. And you could make the argument that this entire fight started a decade ago when the company Juul effectively popularized vaping. Now, many communities, many families are still dealing with the impact.
What do you mean by that?
I've reported on many of those teens who are still vaping or vaped for a long time because it's been so hard to quit, like Bella Sandoval-Encinas, who's a Denverite in her early 20s. She told me she started in high school with a mint jewel, and it took years to decide to quit.
Fall of junior year, I was definitely addicted. And I don't think that when I was 14, I realized that that's what I was getting myself into. I didn't realize it was going to become a fully addiction.
In fact, there was a study about this from USC released just this week. It found among adolescents who vape, daily nicotine use has nearly doubled, and the difficulty in quitting has significantly increased. So the winning side of this vote to install the ban on flavored nicotine in Denver certainly hopes they can limit access to young consumers.
We mentioned that Bloomberg spent $5 million to support the ban. It's in fact the most given by an individual to a Denver municipal race, that according to the clerk's office. But can people just get these products in neighboring cities?
Denver's the 14th city in Colorado to pass restrictions on the sale of nicotine products, so they're still legal in the cities adjacent to Denver. So the answer to your question is yes, for now. These products are still available in the metro area as well as along the Front Range. Advocates are pushing for this kind of ban across the state and country. Nationwide, almost 400 municipalities, along with 6 whole states, have restricted flavored tobacco sales. And Michael Bloomberg has been a leading supporter of those efforts. We've made requests for comment from him and not heard back. It seems Bloomberg is clearly making a statement with his campaign donations.
CPR's John Daly, thank you for your reporting.
You bet.
November is Native American Heritage Month. And Bozzy has the story for you of a Chickasaw man named John Harrington, whose childhood in Colorado helped him become a trailblazer in space.
Long ago, when the world was very young, the moon was a plaything of the animal tribe of people.
John Harrington is narrating in a song called Moonstrike by composer Jared Tate, who is also Chickasaw.
Let our sons go out and learn how to steal the moon.
Here, Harrington is sharing American Indian legends about the moon. Way before he knew what he'd do with his life, he'd found a love for Earth in Colorado.
I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, and I've always treasured the moments I had growing up in the Springs and growing up in the mountains. I skied. My first ski lesson was at the Broadmoor back when I was about 10 years old.
That love of the outdoors led to a passion for rock climbing, which he first learned at the Garden of the Gods. He was a student then at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs.
I put more effort into climbing than I did into education and got kicked out of school for low grades.
He was working at a restaurant in 1977 when a friend suggested another way to get paid.
He said, rock climbing. I said, really? I said, where? He said, Interstate 70, Glenwood Canyon. We're building a highway, and we need rock climbers to help survey the cliffs.
He got the job, and he discovered the type of grit that would lead him forward.
And it was the first time in my life where I actually thought I was good at something. I actually thought, this was a way to really test myself.
Harrington went back to school, finished a math degree. He joined the Navy, where he became an awarded officer and pilot. About a decade later, he joined NASA, and in a 2002 mission to the International Space Station,
this view of John Harrington working in the vicinity of the UHF antenna.
He became the first enrolled member of a Native American tribe ever to fly in space.
And looking out across the edge of the earth, out into the vastest universe, and it was the first time in my life where I felt like there was nothing between me and whatever else is out there.
Harrington was an Abba Noah. That's the Chickasaw word for astronaut. It literally means above walker.
It was a very humbling experience, incredibly humbling experience.
After NASA, Harrington moved into education, focused on how to engage more Native students in STEM studies.
I think being able to connect them, like when I talk to Native kids, I like to say that our ancestors were exactly that. They were engineers, they were botanists, they were chemists. They were astronomers. They knew the world around them intimately. And the fact that if you can tie what your ancestors did to what we're doing now and say, hey, your ancestors did this, you are capable, you have that ability, It's in your DNA. It may be a different way of learning, but if this is what you want to do, go down that path.
He had rolled the moon down the first slope.
John Harrington's life has had surprising twists and turns, just like the characters in many American Indian folk tales.
Then they asked Coyote, "Do you think you would make a good moon?"
He's found the morals of these stories apply in his own.
Listen to people in your life that encourage you to do something that you may not think about doing, and listen to them. Because if you do, you'd be surprised where you end up. I'm like anybody else. I just got to do something pretty remarkable.
One of the people who encouraged him was a 6th grade teacher in Colorado Springs who'd given him a bracelet that he ended up carrying all the way to the International Space Station. He got to tell her how much it meant to him years later. To hear that story and much more with Harrington, check out today's Colorado Matters podcast.
Reporting for today's show came from Denverites Kevin Beatty and reporter Nell London. Remember to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can get a free honeysuckle white turkey when you spend $100 or more in a single transaction through November 27th. Clip the offer in the Safeway app and make your holiday feast delicious.